Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ril Gerald Quinn, episode 854, season 15. Hope everybody out there is enjoying their Wednesday as we head towards another weekend and, not too far from the Thanksgiving holiday. Tonight, rolling solo. So I will not be joined by one Robert Sapp, but I'm sure he is very excited about another victory from his Buffalo Bills. I don't know how we didn't talk about Buffalo. Um, I don't know how excited he is. I have a feeling that he probably was not too pleased with the second half of that Buffalo Green Bay game. But regardless, Buffalo keeps rolling. They are the best team in the league. And we'll talk more about that game very shortly. Themes of this NFL week as we head towards a week 9. Welcome back offense. We saw at least 8 teams, 7 to 8 teams crack the 30-point barrier. Saw a couple of shootouts. Uh, as in comparisons to what we've seen this entire season in terms of offenses, it was a explosion. So somewhat not all the way, but somewhat welcome back to the offense. We're gonna go right away with all the thoughts slash the Buffalo segment. Of course, Robert Sapp is not here, but I have some thoughts about their victory over the Green Bay Packers. This game was never in doubt. That's number one. It wasn't even as close as 27-17, despite the fact that Green Bay outgained Buffalo 24-7. This game was over. Okay. So there was a moment when Green Bay, had a touchdown called back that, maybe it gets, interesting if that touchdown doesn't get called back. But the bottom line is Green Bay was never going to win this game. They toyed with Buffalo. They toyed with Green Bay in the first half. Now, uh, second half, Buffalo did next to nothing. They only had 3 points, a couple of turnovers, a couple of just sloppy interceptions from Allen. Jair Alexander picked off 2 of them. Again, I'll get to some Alexander stuff later on. I don't know why he was doing so much talking. Like, dude, your team lost and got really handled. But if you're a Buffalo fan, you gotta be concerned about the fact that a team had 208 yards rushing on you, and you knew that that's what they were trying to do. Basically, that was the only thing that they could do. Green Bay, of course, we know that they don't have that the receivers are mediocre. Yeah, the tight end is pretty good, but he can't. He's not Travis Kelsey, and it was clear, like 31 rushes, 30 passes, what Green Bay was trying to do. In regards to that, Buffalo had no answer for it. That is concerning, especially being in a conference with Kansas City, being in a conference with Tennessee, being in a conference with some of those other AFC teams, Baltimore and what have you. Even though, but I believe Buffalo is, with the exception of Kansas City, heads and shoulders uh, above everybody, with the exception of Kansas City. Philadelphia possibly in the Super Bowl matchup. 208 yards is a lot of yards. So that, if I'm Buffalo, uh, that was something that I'm sure had the attention of McDermott and Leslie Frazier and company. And again, it is in essence the best of both worlds, because yes, you get the win, you win decisively playing your C game, but you know what the goal is. You can tell your teammate, hey, look, we we gotta get this. We gotta get this. We got to get this fixed. We got to tighten this up. Like 208 yards against a Green Bay team, and whose offensive, by the way, Green Bay's offensive line is not. It's not a vintage Green Bay offensive line by any stretch of imagination. It is not the 2020, the 2019 Packers, the 2020 Packers. Or Green Bay has had traditionally and especially in the Aaron Rodgers era, some top 5 offensive lines in the league. This is not that. They right now, to me, are a decent offensive line. They're not bad, but they've had some injuries. They've had some inconsistencies with different lineups and Bakhtiari. That whole ordeal, which has kind of gotten strange. Last week I didn't mention this, but last week he practiced for 3 days but didn't play in the game, and here Green Bay people talking about rumblings about what's going on with that. No Elton Jenkins. So Buffalo will have to tighten that up if they want to, get to the Super Bowl, and more importantly, get past Kansas City. But again, Buffalo, they are 6-1. You're at the top of the league. You've beaten Green Bay. You've beaten Baltimore. You've beaten Kansas City. You have one loss on the road against Miami, which was kind of like just a game that you clearly should have won. But that was, can't. I'm not going to go crazy and call that a horrible loss, because consider how how well Miami has played when Tua has been healthy and playing well, division rival. So Buffalo is exactly where they want to be. And I'm telling you right now, look at the Buffalo schedule. Their schedule, they've gotten past the rough part of their schedule. 16-1 is not off the table. It's not. I still lean towards them probably going 15-2, but 16-1 is not off the table. Like they will be favored in the rest of their games. Now the division is better than what we expected coming into the season, though. I don't have any faith in the Jets or New England by any stretch of imagination. But those teams are competitive. But we know, like, the team that Buffalo, is not worried but concerned. It has to be keeping your attention to the Miami Dolphins, and we'll talk more about them, especially considering the trade that they made. The trade that they made this week. So Buffalo is exactly where they want to be, exactly where they should be. Getting to Green Bay. Green Bay, this is how you have to play to be competitive. Now, Green Bay, from a contender standpoint, that's over with. They're not. The division is gone. Minnesota's going to run away and hide with the division. Green Bay, right now, you're competing for, well, two things. One, most importantly, you are trying to, as a franchise, because you're going to start to hear this if these losses keep piling up. You're competing. You're fighting to bring back Aaron Rodgers in 2023. Now, just thought about that. Forget about the playoff spot. Like a 7 seed, a 6 seed is what that would mean next to nothing for Green Bay. And we know the NFC is down, but it's not that down. Green Bay will be if they got in the playoffs as a 6 or 7 seed, they'll be a one and done. This team is not going anywhere. I don't even care if they trade for a receiver. They can get Odell Beckham, whatever. They're not going anywhere. You are actually playing for Aaron Rodgers next season. And what I mean by that is I can see this thing getting so bad to where Aaron Rodgers says, you know what, fuck this, I'm out. He says plenty of money, got his MVPs, has done everything you can do. I should, obviously, with the exception of winning more championships, but he does have a Super Bowl championship and a Super Bowl MVP. I'm good. Go play some golf, go hang out. I'm good. I'm 38 years old. It's a wrap. Like, I don't see this franchise getting any better. That's what you're playing for. Like, you have to convince him that this year was a fluke. It happens to the best of NFL teams. You were due for a year like this, considering what 3 straight 13-win seasons, so on and so on. So if this thing goes way left, I can easily see Aaron Rodgers retire. It wouldn't shock me in the least bit. So that, to me, is what you're playing for. That's the biggest thing that Green Bay as a franchise is playing for. Convincing Aaron Rodgers to come back in 2023. As far as the game of the week, this game was actually closer than the score indicated. Seattle over the Jets, the Giants, 27-13. The story of this game was was the Seattle defense. Seattle defense, which has been bad all season, was great in this game. They hold the Giants to 225 yards total. And they hold Saquon Barkley in check. I couldn't have been more impressed with Geno Smith, and I'm gonna tell you why. Again, the stats were, pretty good. He didn't make the big mistake, but the defensive plan that Brian Dable and the Giants had on him in that offense was the was near perfect. Like the actual plan was perfect. Like they, for the most part, kept him in the pocket, made him a play. Like they kept everything in front of them for the most part. Um, and Geno Smith made every throw that you could possibly make. And matter of fact, Lockett had just a horrific day, dropping touchdowns, a fumble. Just had one of the worst days he probably has had his entire career. He's been a very good player in the league for a while, but Geno Smith, as far as accuracy goes, there's not a more accurate quarterback in the league right now than Geno Smith in 2023 and 2022. He has been the most accurate quarterback in 2022, and it's not even close. Some of the passes that he can, even the passes that were like incomplete passes, were just some of the most beautiful balls, uh, beautifully thrown balls. That was almost a pause that you will ever see. Like he made a pass to Lockett at the end of the first half, and Lockett's foot was out of bounds, but you can't hand the ball to a receiver in a better place. Can't. Like it's just again, his transformation into becoming now one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league this season. He has been the most accurate quarterback in the league. Is really remarkable. I mean, we talked about it with Robert Sapp a couple of weeks ago. May have been last week, or even a couple of weeks ago. But like he is not missing passes. Like he's just not. If the ball's incomplete, it's because the receiver dropped it. Like that's all. That's it. That's all there is to it. Or the receiver's out of bounds. Like he's just not missing. So I thought I was impressed with his performance because the Giant defense is very good. They're legit. They have been a legit top 10 defense. The game plan, I thought, to how defend Seattle, they held Seattle's running game in check for the most part. So Geno had to be on his game as far as not. This was a game that was tight for most of the game, and that a big turnover would change the entire momentum of this game, which it did in Seattle's favor. So it was one of those type of games where one play was going to shift this game. Um, and again, the pre-snap reads that he was making, again, just does not miss passes. If the ball, he's going to put the ball in the right place where it needs to be, throw receivers open. So I thought he was phenomenal, despite the fact that didn't put up like stats that will jump out off the page. But I just thought his just manipulation of the defense and his just getting the ball placement was spectacular. Not a big deal for the Giants. Seattle is a tough place to play. Has become a tough place to play this year. So that that kind of that 12th man is back. Seattle's played well. They improved to 5-3. Giants fall to 6-2. Giants are still somewhat in the division. Like they're about a game and a half out of first in terms of really in terms of behind Philadelphia. But the Giants are still the Giants. If you're at the near the midway point of 6-2, the Giants are fine, and they will, unless a rash of injuries takes transpires, they will be in the playoffs. Games of note: Miami, Detroit. Um, this was the Tua game. Tua was spectacular in this game, to say the least. He threw the ball. This is the best he's thrown the ball since the Baltimore game. Again, was off his game against Pittsburgh, coming off the concussion and the time missed. But he was 1,000% on top of his game against Detroit. He needed to be, because Miami's defense was not that good. Detroit was able to jump out early at 14-0. Miami fought back, tightened up, in the second half defensively, got enough stops, but their offense exploded in the second half, led by Tua, as he just made every pass, threw the ball all over the place. And Miami gets a much needed win on the road against a Detroit team that we know Detroit is bad, but they do have an offense that can like kind of scare you a little bit at times. They put up a bunch of yards, and they have some nice weapons. On the with the running back is pretty good, and Golf occasionally can get hot. So Detroit's one of those teams that is horrible, but at home can be somewhat dangerous. They've been competitive in a couple games. especially at home. But regardless, Miami was able to handle their business to stay in the AFC, not East race, but the AFC playoff race. Tampa Bay, Baltimore, of course, this was the Thursday night game. 27-22. Baltimore was able to win this game. Baltimore, this game would not have been as close as it was if not for the 101 yards of penalties from Baltimore. Baltimore physically pushed Tampa around, 231 yards rushing. They held the ball for 38 minutes. Again, this game is not close if not for the uh the penalties, 101 yards penalties from Baltimore, which we all know 100 yards is like the equivalent of 7 points. Once you start having that amount of yards and penalties, again, not a great performance from Baltimore, but the bottom line is, you go on the road, get a win against a desperate Tampa Bay team. Tampa Bay at 3-5, similar to Green Bay. They're done. Like they're not. Now again, they could win that division because that division is so bad. But even if they were to win the division, they're not. They are they would be walking dead in the playoffs. Nothing to fear out of Tampa. They did some decent things offensively though. Brady kind of looked okay at times during this game. So this is probably as well as they played offensively, maybe the entire season, to be honest, perfectly honest with you. But it wasn't enough against Baltimore. Baltimore gets listen, Baltimore, you're taking wins any which way you can, considering some of your fourth quarter meltdowns this season. But I'm not about to go say get crazy and say Baltimore is back and should be taken serious. No, they won a game that they absolutely should have won. San Francisco, LA, the Rams, the more things change, the more they stay the same. The San Francisco 49ers simply own the Rams. Like the Rams, and I thought the way this game started, that streak, that regular season streak, which is now up to 8, not including the NFC Championship, would be snapped. And it started out promising, but San Francisco made adjustments, completely dominated the game in the second half, shut out the Rams. This was, of course, the Christian McCaffrey game. Three touchdowns, 3 different ways with the rushing, receiving, and passing. The pass, the halfback option pass play was beautiful. It was a perfectly designed and executed play. That touchdown pass he threw to Brandon Ayuk. San Francisco was going to be dangerous. They with this Christian McCaffrey trade, with the Kyle Shanahan play calling and what he can do with a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who, when he's healthy and on the field, is can be one of the most, you know, complete backs in the league, rushing and receiving wise. Like he's great, but he just not has not similar to Saquon Barkley. He just can't stay on the field. But I have a feeling like that is scary. What some of the stuff that Kyle Shanahan can concoct with Christian McCaffrey. Like he is the ultimate weapon for that team, and a much needed weapon because he can take the pressure off Debo Samuel, and more importantly, take the pressure off Jimmy G from doing Jimmy G type stuff in big spots in key moments during the game to lose the game. So we know how good San Francisco's defense is. I know their defense hadn't played well for a couple of weeks, but they are still legitimately a top 5 defense all around. That team is going to be. I'm telling you right now, if I'm in the NFC, I would not want to see them in the first round. Like, I would be wanting to avoid them, playing them in a wild card situation. You can't, of course, or a divisional situation. That I would want no part of San Francisco. If I'm a top team in the NFC, i.e., Philadelphia, Minnesota, Dallas or Dallas, I think San Francisco is going to win that division. I don't. I no. I think San Francisco. Excuse me. I think it's going to be a dogfight between San Francisco and Seattle. I still lean towards San Francisco. Remember, despite the fact that San Francisco is one game behind Seattle, they manhandled Seattle earlier this season. That's really the only bad game that Seattle has played all year long, even in their defeats. Most of their, other than with the exception of that loss, even Seattle's losses have been close. But this San Francisco team is dangerous. Like they are a team that can beat on his best day, on his best day can beat anybody in the NFC. Now again, I don't think even on their best day, I don't think they can compete with the likes if they were to make a Super Bowl with Buffalo and Kansas City. They're not on that. They even them on their best day, they're not on that level. But in the NFC, they on their best day they can beat anybody. Now the problem is they can also lose to anybody. So San Francisco is kind of like this mercurial team that you don't know quite which team is going to show up at times, especially with the ups and downs of Jimmy G. But we know the defense is we know they have an excellent defense and we know they're well coached. Look out for them down the stretch. So we're gonna kind of take a right turn and deep dive what has been a colossal failure, shit show, dumpster fire. You want to use all those phrases. The Nets, the Brooklyn Nets, matches up perfectly with what the where the Brooklyn Nets are right now. They are a laughing stock of the NBA right now. Just when you think it can't get worse, it does get worse. At as we stand here on a Wednesday, first week of November, they are 2-6, coming off of a Chicago loss, and the night before that, remember they almost lost back-to-back games to Indiana. They had to fight for their lives, their basketball lives, to beat a Indiana team that is not trying to win by any stretch of imagination. So they are right now at the bottom as far as not so much with their record. They have one of the worst records, but they just as a culture right now they have one of the worst coaches in the league. Uh, I'm gonna do so. I'll get to what recently transpired. Before I get to Kyrie Irving stuff, I'll get to Steve Nash. So Steve Nash, yesterday it was announced that Steve Nash and the Nets had mutually parted ways. Uh, you know, mutually parted ways after basically 2 years of uh just madness and a whole lot of what could have been, what wasn't, and what never will be, in my opinion. It got to a point where it was just like, you know what, you need to go your way, I need to go mine. But I'm telling you, normally when you hear the phrase mutually parted ways, it's normally like a nice way of letting the coach go without saying outright, hey, this guy or a person has been dismissed. I believe that this was mutual. And to be honest with you, if I were to guess, I believe that this was more Steve Nash wanting out than the Nets wanting him out. Steve Nash, you remember, you forget, if you've forgotten, Steve Nash is worth a boatload of money. Made well over $150 million in salary. That doesn't count endorsements. He owns a club soccer team. He has, I believe, 5 kids. 3 of them are young. He has a number of things that he could be doing other than dealing with this or being in the midst of this disaster. Um, and I just think that it got to a point to where, you he just doesn't come off as somebody who is a crisis manager. And I don't know how many coaches could have dealt with what's going on with the Brooklyn. Um, this thing was never going to work out in terms of Steve Nash. It just wasn't. They never respected him. He never should have gotten that job because he had no. I mean, what I mean had no prior coaching experience. He had zero. He hadn't even served as an assistant. I mean, you got guys in the NBA who do some of them do 5 to 10 years as an assistant before they get a job. Okay, so there was no apprenticeship. It was just the fact that he was cool with Kevin Durant. They had some Golden State connections, and the fact that Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant basically said this will be he'll be a nice placeholder as we run the franchise, especially on the court. He's a nice guy. Remember, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, we don't need a coach. This is a collaboration. And they legitimately said that. Those were legitimately the words that came out of their mouth. It came out of their mouth, especially Kyrie Irving. And at that point, you knew that this again, this was just it was not going to work for Steve. Like Steve Nash just was not the guy for this franchise. Um, Coaching in the NBA in 2022, you have to be able to emotionally and relationship wise connect with players. You cannot, and you cannot, you have to be respected by the players. Like the players have to. If if you have a situation where a player does not view you as a coach, in essence, I mean, what like you have no chance. And there was a number. I mean, like Nash is seemingly a smart guy. He was a point guard, and one is like he saw plays before during his playing days. Besides being a great shooter, would see things before it happens on the court, made great decisions. But that does not translate to coaching. That doesn't translate to making adjustments. Most importantly, it definitely doesn't translate to dealing with people. There's a difference between being liked and respected. Nash may have been liked, but again, he was not respected at all. When one of your players just disappears and basically doesn't tell you where he's at, like that literally happened with me and Kyrie Irving last year. He said, I haven't heard from him. I don't know where he's at. That's one of your top two players saying this. That's like, you leaving your job, not giving your supervisor any heads up. Supervisor's like, well, where they at? Where's Surreal? Surreal. I saw him on Monday. It's Thursday now, and you still haven't heard from him. If I do that, that means I have zero regard for you as not only as a coach, but just as a human being. To be honest with you, I have no respect for you. So this thing was not going to happen. I don't feel sorry for Steve Nash. When you walk into a player dominated franchise where the players can have all the power, it is what it is. And you have to know when somebody doesn't respect you. Like he seemingly was cool with that and just felt like, hey, we can roll out two all stars, or even when they had hard three all stars, and win a chip. Kind of doesn't work like that in the NBA. So the Nets are in a position where they don't really have too many places they can turn. To be honest with you, as far as a franchise. Now, look, well, I'll get to the Udoka stuff in a second, but if you're the Nets right now, like you would love for Kyrie Irving to be gone off the team. I would think that you would love to move him and turn a chapter on that. The problem with that is he's Kevin Durant's guy. Can't do that. Even if you got like 10 cents on a dollar, which you probably could get more than 10 cents on a dollar for Kyrie Irving. And I'll be honest with you, that it was a time where it was like dead set that I would make a move trading Kyrie Irving for Russell Westbrook if I'm the Lakers. If I'm the Lakers, I'm not making that trade right now. I'm sorry. I'm not doing it right now because even though I think Irving is a better basketball player than Russell Westbrook, I just can't trust Kyrie. Just from a character standpoint, at this point, I just can't. I don't trust that you. I can't trust him. And by the way, he has been again from a basketball standpoint is a guy who has been injury prone as well. So yeah, I take that in consideration. But that trade seemingly was something that was a no-brainer for the Lakers to make without giving up the two first if they could do it without giving up two first-round picks. As a Laker fan, I don't want Kyrie Irving on my team. To be honest with you, I don't. I'd rather we're not winning a championship regard with either one of them. I just give me this version of Westbrook, and we'll see tonight if he can have three straight good games coming off the bench. But give me this version of Westbrook coming off the bench. I will take that over what Kyrie Irving brings to the table, and not just all around. You can't just say, oh, he's scoring, coming to last night's game. I don't know what his averages are now. I'm sure they dropped because he had a horrible game, but coming into last night's game, he was averaging like 30 a game. You can't just look at the points because he and Durant right now are putting up empty calorie points. They are empty calorie. The team's losing. Okay. So I don't want to hear about their stats. I want to hear about his numbers. He's gotten to a point to Irving has gotten to a point to where the distraction outweighs the production. Period. So as the Nets, they are stuck. They are stuck. Their best bet is to let Irving's contract run out. He becomes an outright free agent. They say sayonara, see ya, and then they proceed to either try to take one last shot at building around Kevin Durant, or just saying or looking or getting the best deal for Kevin Durant. That's it. As far as Udoka, I don't know how that's going to work out, considering that you have two guys in terms of Durant and Irving. Now, by the way, if you haven't heard, Ime Udoka will be the next coach of the Brooklyn Nets. That's going to happen. They're finalizing the contract details probably as we speak. So, in Boston, Boston, don't worry about from that standpoint of compensation. Boston could care less about compensation. Boston wants Udoka just out of their hairs. They, from a public relations standpoint, from a just no distraction, no, they want him gone. They're Boston. There were conversations, there were reports that there were conversations between Udoka and the Nets even before this Nash thing went down. So it's like Udoka is going to be the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Now, this is a very interesting match for a couple of reasons. Number one, you have two people who are in kind of desperate situations. The Nets wanting to take one last shot at a championship this year before they probably have to blow this thing up. And Udoka trying to rebuild his career after what's transpired in the last month. I don't think this is a great job, but if you're Ime Udoka, you probably have to take it and let the chips fall where they may be. Um, the idea that Udoka is being left off, is being left um, taken off the hook from his indiscretions is comical. He lost a ton of money. Okay, he lost a ton of money. His negotiating there, the Nets probably will get him on the cheap, despite their current predicament. He's even probably as he doesn't have too many. It's not too many places right now that probably will go after him. There are top jobs. Um, so he's probably not going to get the money that he was going to get had all the stuff not went down with him in Boston. So I don't get a sense. I mean, the public embarrassment, his personal life that is with his son, and having to see all that, and like that's a lot that he had to deal with. A self-inflicted wound, but that's not make it seem like he's getting off scot free just because he's going to get another job in the same season. He's not. This net situation is not a. This is a bad situation right now. That culture is some shit. Period. Okay, it's not. And by the way, if I wasn't in, if if I were a coach who was in demand, I would not and didn't have a black cloud hanging over my head because of my actions. I would not take this job. So they're almost in a sense a match for each other from that standpoint. But from the standpoint of basketball and him trying to deal with the personalities with Durant and more so Irving, it's gonna be very interesting because those are two guys that, and this is more so even Irving. I think you can coach Durant hard. I'm not sure you can coach Kyrie Irving hard. And Udoka got Boston to where they were 2 games away from the finals because he coached those guys hard. He would call out those players, Tatum, Brown, whoever, Marcus Smart. He called them out and coached them hard. And that's why that was the difference between he and Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens might have been great X's and O's, but Brad Stevens, his voice did not carry the weight as far as holding players accountable to the level that Udoka did last season. Henceforth, they get to the finals and almost win the championship. So I don't know how that works in Brooklyn. Either way, whoever they brought in, and I like Udoka. I think he's an excellent young coach. I don't see this working out well for Brooklyn. I don't think this thing this they are their culture again. They have no foundation as a franchise. I don't think that one guy, as excellent of a coach as he is, can change the fortunes of an entire franchise within the season, considering how fractured this franchise is. I just don't think it's possible. That's something that would have to be done by Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Neither one of those guys are leaders. Neither one of those guys no. This thing is the Titanic right now, and they are going to have a season where, I mean, I like, if you told me that they could would miss, like, is it off the table that they could miss the playoffs? No, I think they probably will make it because of the playing situation. They'll be at least in the playing, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're not amongst the top 8 teams once the play in tournament is done. Like, I don't trust it. Like, this is how far they have fallen as a franchise. Period. As far as the Kyrie deal, listen, we can go back and forth for eternity about what is anti-Semitic, what is not. The bottom line is you can't tell another group how to feel, right? If I offend you and I didn't mean to offend you, I still have to acknowledge the fact that, okay, I wasn't trying to offend you, right? I'm still going to be like, all right, look, I wasn't trying to offend you, but this was my perspective. Like, I'm not, but I'm not. What I'm not going to do is sit up here and completely take zero, basically no responsibility for my actions, and double or basically triple down on just insanity, like the stuff Kyrie, like, and as the days have gone along, the video that was based on the book on Amazon comes out. You see some of the excerpts and some of the Hitler stuff, and some of the Holocaust is a hoax and some shit like that. It's like, what are we talking about here? Yeah, clearly that's anti-Semitism. Like, with like what is something again? It's something that, if you're Kyrie Irving, and this is what Kyrie Irving is, this is why Kyrie Irving is not a number one on a team. This is why he can't lead your franchise, because he just lacks self awareness. I feel he doesn't like, he just, and he doesn't hold himself accountable. To be an effective leader, you have to hold yourself accountable. Uh, if you're going to hold other people accountable, like, even, and by the way, Kyrie's all over the place. Like, he calls out the media for criticizing Ben Simmons, when in like game 1 or 2, he called out Ben Simmons in the media because he had fouled out of the game. Like, tells the media, give him a chance, but you haven't given him a chance because you're calling him out publicly for fouling out. So that's where Kyrie's at. Because the biggest problem you had in that press conference, that back and forth with Nick Friedel, who asked legitimate and fair questions, is, I'm posting something, but it's not promoting it. That just makes no fucking sense. Like, if you post something on your social media platform, that is a form of promotion. Period. There's no. That's when you hear something like that, somebody did be in complete denial of something like that. That's when like you can't even talk to somebody like that. Like, that's not even a conversation, because it's like you are clearly have gone left, and I'm not talking about from a political standpoint, but just you're in another place, and you're not like we're not going to forget about the agreement, agreeing whatever. We can't even agree to disagree. We can't. It can't. It's not even a conversation with somebody who thinks like that. It's not, because you're so steadfast in your views and your thoughts and in terms of how you feel, that you're not even going to see anybody else's perspective. And that is where we as a society have failed miserably. We don't look at nuance. We get caught up in our own thoughts and opinions, and it's like, fuck your thoughts, fuck your opinion. And that's no way to go in terms of having a open dialogue and respecting each other as human beings. Excuse me. Now, I don't want to sit up here and turn this into a. I don't want this to turn into the oppression Olympics. Okay, I don't. That's the last thing I want to see. Um, I just you just got you. We just need to learn how to listen to each other in a empathetic and an intentional way. Now, as far as Kyrie goes, Kyrie is Kyrie, right? He's gonna do what he does. He's going to, completely just again take no accountability. Um, the media is like the evil empire to him. Anytime you push back on Kyrie's thoughts or his opinions, he completely just shuts you off and just doesn't. It's not even. It doesn't even become a conversation. It becomes like is kind of like talking to a child. Like his behavior in that press conference was embarrassing. Like towards the latter part of that press conference, like it became like are you kidding me? This is how like dude you're like I think Kyrie's 30. Like you're a 30-year-old man. Like what are we doing here? I mean it was very it was very unprofessional. He was he was like a child in that press conference towards the latter part, especially the last 2 to 3 minutes. He was. It's like you just want to hear what you want to hear, and any disagree. I mean, um, the one thing I think Fidel could have done differently was say you have to understand what that's where he made a mistake. Because as soon as that word you hear the word have to, Kyrie's gonna be like, I don't have to, that triggered like who are you to tell me what I gotta do and all that. Then that's when it was it was long gone after that. But other than that, the line of questioning was fine. Um, if you're Kyrie and Kyrie can talk to Colin Kaepernick about this. You can talk to any revolutionary over the course of history, whether it be Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, whoever. You can go through them all. They when you're Muhammad Ali, when you are fighting for something that you believe in, right, and you're going against the quote unquote system or the powers that may be, or you have strong opinions or strong views on anything, religion, politics, or whatever, you are going to have to deal with a certain level of smoke. It's going to count. Somebody's going to disagree with you. Somebody's going to think that you're out your mind. Somebody like that's just that comes with the territory. That's just part of life. Any form of activism. That's just it is what it is. Kyrie he doesn't want any smoke, and that is it's that is never going to be the case when you are quote unquote not quote unquote not him quote saying he's an activist, but when you are dealing with non basketball related activities. And yes, we're like sometimes, and again, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the NBA players, what they've done off the court, business wise, how they conducted themselves for the most part, especially as in comparison to NFL players, where you don't hear nowhere near the amount of off the field indiscretions and DUIs and stuff like that with NBA players as you do with the NFL. So NBA players again have, for the most part, carry themselves like professionals, and they handle their business. They do a lot in the community, and they've been speaking out, especially in the last couple of years, in regards to what's going on in our world, especially amongst the Black community. With that being said, you can't have it both ways. Like you can't pick and choose when you want to talk about activism or when you want to talk about off the court issues, unless it's personal. Like somebody in your personal life, that's one thing. But this was not about Kyrie Irving's personal life with his family, wife, or what have you. No, this was about something he posted. He posted that on social media. He talked about Alex Jones. These are things that he has done that the media just so has happened to respond to. Period. So you can't choose when to be an activist versus when to be a basketball player. As soon as there's a lot of times with some of these guys, as soon as there's any pushback to what they think or what they say, it's like, I don't. Let's talk about basketball. That's not a basketball question. Like, no, 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 don't work like that. You choose to participate in non-basketball activities, chances are you're going to get asked non-basketball questions, especially when this is your doing. This is not nothing that was manufactured. This is not nothing that came off Twitter or it was a rumor or innuendo. No, 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 no. This was you posting something like this, posting that link to the video on your platform. So again, the Nets are the Nets. It's not like I said. If you're a Nets fan, it's not gonna get. It's only gonna get worse before it gets better. Again, I was even before all this stuff went down, I was amazed about how many people were so high on the Nets going to the season. It really just, I'm like, really, you after after what you've seen in the last year or so, from James Harden on to you know, Durant, you still trust this culture and trust this franchise to make a run? Like you're still enamored by the talent. I don't get it. Like no, I've seen enough. We come into the season like no, the Nets are not contenders. They're not. Like they'll make the playoffs, but they're not. They are not somebody that has a legit chance to win a championship. But I guess you have to actually see the building burn down before you recognize that there is an actual fire. So from that standpoint, so the Nets are who they are. We'll see what happens with you. Udoka, I expect to be named the coach before the weekend is out. To be honest with you, and we will see what when if and when Kyrie Irving ever talks to the media in the next couple of weeks or so, or maybe next couple of months. Who knows how long? He hasn't spoken to the media since this transpired with Friedel. Uh, I think it was this what was it Sunday? This happened over the weekend or even late last week. I ain't lost track of the days, but he hasn't spoken to the media since. So we'll see what transpires moving forward. Uh, Getting back to the NFL, stock up. The Tennessee Titans have now run off 5 straight victories after the 0-2 start. They are winning games like you know doing it with defense and the running game. Derrick Henry had a 200-yard rushing game this past week. Now, again, the thing that makes Tennessee interesting is because, in contrary to the team that we just discussed in terms of the Brooklyn Nets, they have a great culture. They have one of the best coaches in the league, and Mike Vrabel. We know they've won playoff games with a couple of years ago, getting to the conference championship, losing Kansas City. They've been a winning team basically the last 4 years. So they know how to win, and they know how to win games when they don't even play well. Now the room for error is very small for Tennessee, but again, they're a team that you now again. But I know Buffalo destroyed them. They're not the same team that they were when Buffalo destroyed them earlier this season, 41-7. They're not that team anymore. Um, Again, they're kind of similar to San Francisco from the standpoint of I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender, but they're a team that I would not want to see in the playoffs early. They're a team that would buy like they could really uh they could make things interesting. They're a physical team as well. And even if you beat them, they could take some out of you for the next round. Stock down. The quarterback class of 2021. I'm gonna read you this list in case you've forgotten exactly who was drafted in that class. You had Trevor Lawrence, Davis Mills, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Zach Wilson. Now, I'm still a believer in Trevor Lawrence. He has not played well for the most part, especially in the last month. He's been bad. He's been horrible. Especially, I think it probably started with that Philadelphia, that 4-5 turnover game, and he seemingly hasn't recovered from that. But I still believe he could be a franchise caliber quarterback. Davis Mills, never was supposed to be good to begin with, right? People were high on him after last season when he put up decent numbers on a horrible team. I don't think he didn't have high expectations, so I didn't expect much out of him. Like I said, that to him being bad is not a big deal to me. Mac Jones, everybody was on the Mac Jones bandwagon last year. It has come back, crashed back down to earth. He's 3 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and has been nicked up this year, and even involved in a somewhat mini weird quarterback controversy, if you want to call it that. Right now, would you trust him with your franchise? Probably not. Trey Lance injured. Justin Fields hasn't been horrible, but again, haven't seen enough to say I think that he would be a franchise quarterback. And Zach Wilson, frankly, should not be playing starting on the field right now. He shouldn't. Like Zach Wilson should be like Joe Flacco really should be starting ahead of Zach Wilson. So the quarterback of the 2021 class as a whole have been a major disappointment. Now look, and there's the situations we talked about culture during this podcast. Jacksonville trying to rebuild their culture, Houston trying to rebuild their culture. Patriots culture is some shit right now. It is even at 4-4. They're still there. They Bill Belichick is like in the twilight zone of his career. Trey Lance, San Francisco. Trey Lance again, not ready to play NFL, not ready to be an NFL starting quarterback. Fields, horrible culture with Chicago, even though they've had some moments still. Not something, not they're better off than what they were last year. I still got to see more. And the Jets, the Jets but with the Jets, actually, again, Zach Wilson should not be on the field. Jets actually have played well this year. The defense we know is legit, but offensively don't have enough to put a quarterback on there that's not ready to play. So, again, you can be uber talented. Only one of these guys I think is like that. That's Lawrence. But the culture of these teams is just not of any of these teams is not stable enough to warrant to kind of keep them afloat and allow them to make mistakes that's not going to like destroy their team. Like the fact that the Jets are part of the reason why the Jets are 5-2. I mean, Zach, like I said, part of the reason why the Jets are 5-2 is because like Zach Wilson, uh, was able to somewhat manage the game without just having miraculous mistakes. That and they you can only go so long with telling a quarterback, hey, just manage the game. That will only take you so far. Eventually, you have to have a guy that's going to have to make some plays at at a certain point. Again, Lance, Wilson, and I'm telling you right now, looking at this group, the only guy to me that's ready to play right now that I would have confidence starting is Trevor Lawrence. That's the only guy. The rest of those guys, and I mean, and Mac Jones to a lesser extent, but I think last year might have been a fluke. So I think Lawrence is the only guy out of those guys that should not be learning holding a clipboard. So listen, just because a lot of quarterbacks go in a particular draft, more times than not, this is what the results are going to be, especially early on. Who won the week? I would say Christian McCaffrey won the week. Just a big time performance, getting traded after the trade from Carolina. The 3 touchdowns, the receiving, passing, and running touchdown. The first since Daniel Thompson did it in 2005. People forget how great of a player LaDainian Thompson was. He was a tremendous back during his time. Listen, the question is, can he stay on the field? If McCaffrey can stay on the field, that takes San Francisco to another level because that is a perfect complementary piece to Deebo Samuel. Now it can help Deebo Samuel stay healthy by not giving him as much reps and with the runs and what have you. So he could change the fortune of their entire season. We know what their coaching. We know how good Kyle Shanahan is with the play calling. Jimmy G won't. Jimmy G won't win you a lot of games, but he won't lose you. He won't lose you. He's not going to be a disaster. He'll be decent, and again, taking pressure off Jimmy G as well. So, and we know what their defense is. Their defense is special. It is one of the best defenses in the league. Statistically, I think they took the lead back over Buffalo as far as yards allowed per game. So like I said, I think he takes him to another level. My question is all about my only questions that you've had about McCaffrey was his ability to stay on the field. I've never since he's been in the league ever questioned his talent. We know he's one of the best receiving threats in the league when he's on the field. So if that indicate like again, the Rams. And by the way, the Rams are not a bad defense. They've struggled. Their struggles have been because Stafford is in the tank right now, and their offense their offensively outside of Cooper Kupp can't get out their own way. So he did it against a very good Ram defense. Um, but he won the week for me. Biggest disappointment has to be the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, the Bengals were playing well. Burrow was as high as any quarterback in the league, minus Josh Allen last month, and Monday night they just got embarrassed by a Cleveland team that we know is talented but often inconsistent and more time and without definitely without Deshaun Watson, you should never lose that game, especially when you're fighting tooth and nail for a division title with the Baltimore Ravens. That was an embarrassing loss. Miles Garrett, Miles Garrett, one of the five best defensive players in the league, was all over the place. The Cleveland ran the ball anytime, ran the ball all over Cincinnati, and Cincinnati reverted back to what they were at the beginning of the season. When they can't protect Joe Burrow, they look like one of the worst teams in the league. They protect Joe Burrow, they look like a playoff contender. It's just that it's basically just that simple. But at this point in the season, you should not have that type of loss to a team like Cleveland, despite the rivalry, despite the division, being a division opponent. Jacoby Brissett made enough plays, but that game was more about Cincinnati than it was about what Cleveland is. Week 9 preview. We have Tennessee and Kansas City. Um, Very interesting matchup, contrasting styles. We all know that you know you want to keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. Tennessee likes to run the ball. Um, Kansas City, you know, they it'll be interesting watching Kansas City move forward. I'm still big on Kansas City. This game, I think Kansas City will handle Tennessee. I know Tennessee has played well, but I think that I'm still not trusting of Ryan Tannehill right now. I'm not, and like those receivers, I still don't trust those receivers. I think they can hold Henry to like 80 and 90 yards and just not be able to keep up with Kansas City. So I'm looking for like a 31 17, 31 21 type game ordeal with that. I could be wrong. I mean, maybe we're in the midst of something special with Tennessee and them making one of these runs to surprise a lot of people. But I think Kansas City will handle them for the most part because I still think they're one dimensional, and I don't think that you can like deal with the Kansas City team being a one dimensional offense. Buffalo and the Jets. I think Buffalo will be an angry team. The prospects of Zach Wilson against that Buffalo defense, it would be terrifying to me if I were a Jet fan. I could see the Jet defense keeping them in the game maybe for a half, but I just can't see like this game has four turnovers, four Jet turnovers written all over it. I would say 34-10, 34-13, that type of deal. 35-17. I think the Jets struggled to get 17 points in this game, to be perfectly honest with you. Seattle, Arizona, I think just these are two teams going in opposite directions. Seattle will handle Arizona. They just will. I think that Seattle is on a roll right now. I was very impressed with that Giant win. Giants came in hot. Um, this momentum they had, the way Geno Smith was playing. Arizona, I know Hopkins came back, played relatively well, but that's still not enough to me. Uh, I haven't liked what I've seen out of Arizona all year long. Like I don't like that energy that franchise has right now. I still think some of that Kyler Murray thing, offseason stuff, despite the contract, is still lingering in that locker room. I'm not a Kingsbury fan, to say the least. He's not a coach that's gonna keep the locker room together. Matter of fact, like traditionally his teams have gotten worse over as the season has gone along. So, we're close to being in the second half of the season. They got off to a slow start, so I don't expect that trend to reverse to where they start playing better now that we're getting closer to the halfway point and into the second half. And the Rams and Tampa Bay. I mean, 2 years ago, last year, this would have been a classic matchup coming off that great playoff game with Brady almost brought them back. But right now, these are two teams that just are not very good. Uh, I I actually think Tampa Bay is going to win this game. I mean, I, this is basically a pick 'em. This is basically a pick 'em game, to be perfectly honest with you. But I think I saw enough out of Tampa's offense against Baltimore to say that maybe they have some momentum um, going into this week. The Rams just offensively looked like a just shit show. Like they can't get out their own way with the turnover. Stafford has been one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league this year, and I'm not being like that's not hyperbole. He has been horrible. Rams still have a very good defense. So does Tampa. Like I said, this game has 13-10 written all over it. I think this both teams will turn each other over. I think this could be a come down to similar to the last game time they played to a field goal. I think that this could be a close game and a defense will dominate. So like 13-10 or 17-14. I will go because of the home field. Probably I'll go Tampa Bay. A couple of some real thoughts before I let you go. I'm not gonna do the couple of things. I'm gonna say the Commanders stuff with Snyder to next week. There's still some stuff that's coming out. Didn't want to rush it just for like a breaking news or some shit like that. I want to I really probably will deep dive that, especially if Robert Sapp returns. If we get Sapp back on to next week to talk about that. I'm sure he'll have fun. Would have fun. Making fun of my team or destroying my team. So I'll leave that alone. As far as takeoff, again, this has been said far too much over the last couple of years, especially in the hip hop community, with rappers being murdered. Now, I want to make this very clear, in terms of rest in peace, and you just feel awful for the family, loved ones, close friends. But I want to make this clear. This is not on hip hop per se. It just so happens that Takeoff was a rapper, was a rapper, part of one of the biggest hip hop groups in the last decade in terms of the Migos. This is not about this him being killed, or was not. It's not about hip hop. This is not a situation, lyrics, and where it was a reaction from lyrics and things of that nature. Anybody that blames hip hop, then you're just being lazy. That's just a lazy narrative that gets used far too often when these things happen. This is a human situation. This is a situation where I really want to kind of deep dive this too. But I'll say this again. I want to wait till more things come out. I don't like again. I'm not. I go against the grain when it comes to like speculating. Like we've heard details about the dice game, and we know there was a guy we have pictures that he had a gun. That's a person of interest. Quavo wasn't shot, and again, you've heard rumors of what possibly led up to the shot. Like, yes, we know that as a fact that it was basically a stray bullet that takeoff that killed takeoff. Doesn't make it any different than it, even if the person intended to murder takeoff. He's dead. Regardless, he's dead. But I just want to say, like, again, if you hear that debate, if you hear if you hear someone say, well, you see these rappers, I don't even know how you even entertain that conversation. You can entertain the conversation, but you could just correct them. Like, no, this is not him. This is not. He didn't get murdered. He's not dead because he's a rapper. Like, that's not. He basically was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, again, there are a lot of things that I will get into, questions that I have, and things that are on my mind about it, that I kind of want to let sit for a couple of days as some of the details come out, as more things come out. But you know, look, uh, this should not have happened. That's all there is to it. This thing could have been it it it, it could have been de-escalated. You would think that And I think this is even bigger than the whole conversation about guns. Like this was a situation where choices were made. This was a situation of choices. Okay, from from various parties and individuals. This was a choice situation. This was a character, a human situation. This is bigger than hip hop, bigger than the ongoing gun debate that we get into every least once every 2 weeks when someone is shot, is killed. So, by the hands of a gun. So I'm gonna hold off on those two particular subjects until next week. We'll flush them out, discuss it. Look forward to the conversation. Have a great rest of your evening. This podcast will be up early tomorrow morning. So long.